In exactly 6 years, a new country will be born on the world map. It's called Bougainville, and it will be getting its independence from Papua New Guinea. But what's even crazier, though, is this will be the 4th independence in a chain of independences that have happened. Does that make any sense? So like I said, it's gaining autonomy from Papua New Guinea, which Papua New Guinea was formerly owned by Australia, and which Australia was owned by the British Empire. So this is like independence inception. It just keeps getting deeper. But even that isn't enough, because some of the landmass was owned by the German Empire for a second there, until they lost it after World War I. This is just getting too chaotic. So basically back in 2019, this island had a referendum, and basically everybody wanted to be free. 98%. Those are insane numbers. It's obviously not going to happen instantly, though. There's a lot of negotiation, I guess, that's still taking place, but we're assuming this is what it's going to look like in 2027. Here's a map of 50,000 locations randomly sampled from Wikipedia. I'll be honest, I don't even really know what that means. I guess there's a certain URL you can do in Wikipedia that will send you to some random article, and every time a location was brought up, it would be pinged on this map. So I guess in other words, these are like the 50,000 most popular cities in the world. That's not really that impressive to be in the top 50,000, but how many cities really are there? Or how many cities have a Wikipedia article written about them? That's a better question. Google claims there are only 10,000 cities in the world, so maybe this Wikipedia article was just labeling any place in general. It doesn't even need to be a city. It could be a town. It could just be some random desert that no one lives in. Or maybe this says more about all the places on Earth that we still don't really know about just yet, or don't have anything to talk about. I mean, how many times can you really reference the Sahara Desert? There's a lot of desert going on, not a whole lot of other things. Here's a post showing Titanic survival by age and gender. Now I'm gonna assume right away, because they're putting women and children on the lifeboats first, that obviously they will have been saved. A red dot represents they were not saved, and a green means they were. They actually lived through this event. So unsurprisingly, in the male category, there's a whole lot of red dots right here. But I'm more curious about the outliers. How did some of these older men at the age of like 20 and above survive? And then what happened to the females that survived? I'm assuming they didn't even make it to the lifeboat in the first place. What's interesting is that the women between the ages of 20 and 30 seem to be the most likely to have not made it, but there seem to be a lot of women in that age group that were on the ship in general. It's amazing to see like this 80-year-old woman make it. Same thing for the male. This guy was 81 and he survived. Dang, if I was 81, I would have just given up. I don't even know if I'm gonna make it through tomorrow. I would just love to know his story though. Maybe there's some sort of special case. Obviously below the age of 20, we have like children, or is it below the age of 10? What is like the technical age? I know that under 18 is a minor, but did they consider that back in the day? Did they care? And now here's the second post showing the passenger class and their survival rating. Unsurprisingly, if you were in first class, you had a much higher chance of making through it. Second class, a little bit better than the third. The third is, yeah, you're in trouble. It doesn't really matter, I guess, gender or age. I guess that answers my 20 to 30-year-old group. Overall, if you're like 20 to 40 years old, chances are you're in the third class. I mean, that's where everyone is right here. I'm gonna assume that at least a part of this has to do with the fact that wasn't the third class like put down here at the very bottom? And if you're in first class, you're kind of near the top. There are people saying that the research has shown that if you were even a third class woman, you had a better chance of surviving the first class males. Gentlemen, it's been an honor. A world map, but if it was centered around Buenos Aires, Argentina, instead of the UK. I really love these things, no matter what it's deciding to center around. It just shows how weird flat maps are. And even our maps that we use most commonly. But this is probably the cleanest way to do it, especially considering the vastness of the Pacific Ocean and just like how not a whole lot's out there. But if we're gonna change the perspective though, I say we put the center as the North Pole. That way we have like this wall of ice on the outside as Antarctica. Wait a second, isn't there a theory about that? Look how weird South America and Africa look from this view. Like the southern hemisphere as a whole is looking really thick. The good thing about this projection though, is that all points on the map are proportionally correct distances from the center point. And it doesn't have to focus on the North Pole. You can look at North Korea, for instance, and see how far they can launch a missile. That's great. All right, I've been excited for this one. Which US states are actually just city-states? Or basically a state with over half its population located in one metro area. The first one that comes to mind, it's gotta be Illinois. Chicago, it's just like the entire state itself. You don't need all the other stuff. So that red is gonna represent that. Then we have this tan color, too close to call, and then beige with half of the population spread between multiple cities. So it's definitely the case with like the big states, California, Texas, Florida. I completely left out New York. That's right. New York is definitely gonna be up here. So according to those definitions, we have 19 US states, which should be considered city-states. Over 50% of most of the people living in these areas come from like one county or city. I wish there was a graph like which state is the most densely populated in that one area. I would assume either Illinois or New York. Interestingly though, in the case of Rhode Island and the southern part of New Hampshire, a lot of those people just live in what's considered the greater Boston area. So we have city-states making even littler city-states in other states. Am I saying that correctly? You can kind of see where it would happen too. It's crazy. But I think I was correct. Illinois is the big one here. The state itself has 12.67 million as of 2019, and the Chicago metro area has 9.4 of those million. Pretty much 75% located in just this zone alone. No wonder I've seen so many like USA post-apocalypse maps, like where the government has fallen apart and all the states are just like fighting amongst each other. A lot of people do make Chicago just a city-state itself. It all makes sense now. If you were to divide up California, the biggest state in terms of population in the US, the southern half would have 23 million just in the south, and just in the greater Los Angeles area, there's 18.7 million. So California also would have been considered a city-state if you divided it into NorCal and SoCal. It'd be a lot closer in the other half though, like almost exact 50%. Here's another good diagram to follow that up with: the decline of the census tract density in Manhattan, New York City. So this area was more dense 100 years ago than it is currently, which I guess shouldn't be that much of a surprise. That's why in the previous post we talked about like the greater areas, not just a city or county. Talking about the extension of these cities because people kept living further and further away. It's nice not to live on like one block that has just a million people in it. But yeah, a lot of people have been leaving in drones when it comes to this stuff. Look how many people have left the Lower East Side just as a whole. I didn't realize that everybody was living there before. Weird. I know one place that hasn't changed much. Central Park has retained pretty normal population levels. Here's something called ancestral mathematics. Now, in order to have been born, you needed 2 parents, 4 grandparents, obviously, 8 great-grandparents, 16 second, 32 third, and it keeps doubling from there. 64, 128, 256, all the way till your 9th great-grandparents, over 2,000. You needed 2,000 people to get together and do some stuff in order for you to have gotten here. This is a total of 12 previous generations, and 4,000 if you combine them all as of the last 400 years. Think about how many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories in order for you to have gotten here. And here is literally every single one of them looking down from the sky as I can't get a girlfriend, putting our entire lineage at risk. Here is the most common last name in every country. I can't believe Smith is still #1 in the USA. I've always heard that, but I've only run into like a couple of Smith last name people. I've only run into a couple people with their last name being this. I didn't know it was even affecting Canada too, really? Hernandez in Mexico, and we have Lopez, Hernandez, Rodriguez. When it comes to Europe, we have Smiths in the UK, Murphy in Ireland, Martin in France. Oh, this is where all the Garcias coming from. They come from Spain. I've literally never heard of Rossi before. It's the most popular in Italy, or Mueller, maybe some Muellers. De Jong in the Netherlands. What's going on here? Wang in China. Of course, Kim in North and South Korea. There's the Wins in Vietnam. A lot of Tans too. And look at all these Mohammeds. They're taking over. So the Smiths just have to do with the British, basically. That's where they're coming from. Mohammed is only in Egypt as far as the African continent goes. Manuel in Angola. There's some history behind that. And then it is a battle in Latin America. More Gonzalez, more Rodriguez. Oh, Silvas. I know some Silvas. They're from Brazil. Now this is making sense. I'm gonna assume that like this isn't going to change very quickly. It's hard to just like get rid of people's last names. Do we have the data from like 100 or 200 years ago? Would it have changed that much? Population density as of pre-colonial America. I don't really know how we got this data, but as you can see, most Native Americans lived in the central part of these two continents. I mean, I didn't think it was this drastic though. Southern modern Mexico, and then a lot in the Caribbean. There was almost nobody inside of the USA. They were mostly along the coastlines, but there seems to have been more people living on the western side, California, Oregon, even in Canada, which I'm assuming that all has to do with the fact that, you know, like migration migration through the Bering Strait. People were likely to stay on this side of things and walk all the way across the continent and stay right here. But some did, insanely enough. Like, that's amazing. There seem to have been a lot of natives in Virginia, as well as even Georgia. I'm assuming there was just a lot of people here because, like, the more further south you go, the more you're combining two populations. The ones on the East Coast, the ones on the West Coast, they're getting, like, shoved into this funnel. They're all coming together. This has all got to be a pretty big guess, though. I mean, I don't know where they could have got this data from. Belief in heaven and hell from around the world. This graph's showing proportion of respondents who believe in heaven or hell. So the top countries all happen to be Muslim. We have Egypt, Tunisia, Jordan at the very tip top, but the rest of them are following along pretty closely behind. We have the US at about 67%. Strangely, this graph shows us the separation between the percentage who believe in hell versus the percentage that believe in heaven. Obviously, most people are believing in heaven, so they're almost always above this like line in the middle of people believing in both. The Philippines, though, 100% of their people believe in heaven, or almost 100%, but less than 75% believe in hell. That's interesting to me. Is there anyone like below the line? Looks like Taiwan is close, but still around pretty much the average. Here are a couple Orthodox countries. They're right here kind of in the middle, just barely above 50%. We have a lot of European countries as well as Australia. North and Western Europe have little belief in hell. So we have like Germany, Sweden, the Nordic lands. And then finally, all the way down here at the bottom is China. Little belief in either. Looks to be about like 13%. Denmark is pretty close to them though. It's a very interesting way to represent this information. I just wanted to find like one country that like only believed in hell, no heaven. How was there not even one? We need more data. And big thank you to my patrons. RyethePie. This is Gabe. Why am I doing this? iLoveMarx. Drew has a small PP, but I give him money anyways. Dalton D. Drew's Argentinian grandpa. Bring back Polandball. AryanAfterHours. Barnsky W. Ivan Lima. Jesse C. LuxembourgLover. Majestic Unicorn. Max Cooper. McBlorf. Mine Brothers 999 and Stormtrooper 501. Thank you.